All right. Welcome back, everybody, to that 90s pod. You ready for another deep dive? Today, we're going back to the heyday of television talk shows. We're talking Larry King Live.
Ah, Larry King Live.
Ran from 85 all the way to 2010.
Wow.
A long time. But today, we're focusing on, its peak in the 90s.
Right.
And what's really fascinating to me is it's like hard to even imagine now. But there was a time, like before we had viral sound bites.
Oh, yeah.
And, gotcha journalism and like that whole world
Totally different.
is where Larry King just thrived.
Yeah. It's wild to think about Larry King Live in the context of the 90s media. Like, the whole scene was transforming so rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
You had the Gulf War, the collapse of the Soviet Union. I mean, huge changes happening all over the place.
Constant change.
And technologically, it was crazy, too. The rise of cable TV.
Yeah.
And the internet was, like, just starting to come online.
Everyone wanted information, like, right now.
Absolutely.
Up to the minute.
Yeah, instant information was the name of the game.
But in the middle of all of that,
Yeah.
Larry King offered something completely different.
He did. He provided a space for genuine dialogue, and I think that was so important at that time because the media landscape was getting, really fixated on speed, on spectacle.
Like headlines.
Yeah, and Larry was just focused on understanding his guests, understanding their stories.
So what made his interview style so different? I mean, was it just that it was longer?
I mean, the longer format was part of it for sure.
Yeah.
But Larry brought this like genuine curiosity to the table.
Right.
You could tell he was really listening to his guests and his questions. They were always so clear, thoughtful.
And he didn't want to, like, trick his guests.
Oh, absolutely not. He wasn't interested in trying to like get them to say something controversial, just to make headlines.
Right.
He wasn't about that.
Yeah.
He really wanted to get to the heart of the matter. He wanted substance, not sensationalism.
And that's probably why the show was such a hit, especially in the 90s.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It was a time of so much uncertainty and transition for so many people.
Yeah.
And Larry King with his, his signature suspenders
Right.
and that calm demeanor.
Yeah.
He just had this like steady, relatable presence.
Yeah, like someone you'd want to just sit down and have a conversation with.
Exactly. He could talk to anyone about anything, politics, pop culture, you name it.
And speaking of relatable, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Larry King Live and you're loving that 90s pod,
Yeah.
don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell your friends about us.
Yeah, spread the word.
All right, now back to Larry King.
Okay.
So we were reading through the source material for this episode.
Yeah.
And one thing that really jumped out at us was his interview with Maya Angelou.
Oh, that's a great example of how Larry used his, kind of empathetic style to really get profound insights out of his guests.
Yeah.
I mean, Maya Angelou shared so much in that interview, her experiences, her wisdom.
I mean, everyone could relate to it.
It was both deeply personal and universally relatable at the same time, which is a hard balance to strike.
It wasn't about him, though, was it? He was just really focused on his guests and making sure that they were heard.
Yeah, he was great at that. He knew when to be quiet and let the conversation just breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
That created space for genuine connection.
Yeah.
And that's where the real magic of Larry King Live happened. It's amazing to me how Larry King Live's legacy lives on today.
Yeah, like, even though it ended in 2010, it still feels so relevant.
It does.
But how? Like, how does a show from the 90s connect to how we experience interviews today?
Well, I think a good example is the popularity of all those long-form podcasts. The ones where the host and guests just have, like, hours to really dive into their stories and ideas.
Like the Joe Rogan Experience.
Exactly, or WTF with Mark Maron. I mean, these shows really owe a debt to Larry King.
Yeah.
He was the one who showed that audiences crave these, like, authentic, in-depth conversations.
So you're saying he paved the way for the whole podcasting boom?
I think so. He was way ahead of his time. And it goes even further than podcasts. Like, think about how obsessed we are today with authenticity.
Yeah.
Personal storytelling, especially online.
Social media?
Streaming services.
Right.
People are drawn to real stories, real experiences, real connections.
It's all about relatability, right?
Exactly. And that desire for relatability, for like genuine dialogue, I think you can trace that right back to Larry King.
Wow. So one show really had that much of a ripple effect. That's wild.
It is pretty remarkable. And Larry King, he knew how to make his show feel really intimate.
Oh, yeah. No.
Well, one thing that always stood out to me was his microphone placement.
Really?
Yeah, he liked to keep it really close, like almost as if he was whispering in the audience's ear.
Yeah, like bringing you into the conversation.
Exactly. He wanted to create that sense of closeness and intimacy, which is really interesting considering he interviewed some of the biggest names in the world.
Yeah, he had everyone on that show.
He did, from Bill Clinton to Madonna.
Yeah.
I mean, his guest list was incredibly diverse.
Right, not just like one type of person.
No, he wanted to talk to everyone.
And let's not forget he was also a pioneer in taking live calls from viewers.
Oh, yeah, totally.
He really broke down that wall between the show and the audience.
He created this sense of community and interactivity that was really revolutionary for its time.
Speaking of community,
Yes.
if you're digging this trip back to the 90s with that 90s pod, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
Yeah, tell your friends.
So Larry King Live, more than just a show,
Right.
it was a cultural phenomenon that really changed the way we think about interviews and conversations. But here's the big question. In our crazy world of information overload and, having to react to everything instantly, can we even have those meaningful, in-depth conversations that Larry King was all about?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, our world is so different from the 90s.
Right.
I mean, technology and social media have totally changed the way we consume and interact with information.
Yeah.
But, I do believe those kinds of conversations are still possible. In fact, I think they're more important than ever.
But how do we get back to that? I mean, it feels so hard now,
It does.
Like you're constantly bombarded with information and you're supposed to have an opinion on, everything.
Right, and it's all happening so fast.
Yeah, it's like, how do you slow down and, really listen?
It takes a conscious effort, for sure.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to step outside of our own little bubbles,
Our echo chambers.
Yeah, exactly. And really engage with different viewpoints, even ones that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah, even the ones that, make you mad.
Exactly. And the key is to listen with empathy, with an open mind.
It's like we have to relearn how to actually listen instead of just waiting for our turn to talk.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
We have to resist that urge to just jump to conclusions or fire off a quick reaction.
Yeah, just react immediately.
Yeah, instead we should take a cue from Larry King and approach conversations with curiosity.
Yeah.
Ask questions, try to understand the other person's perspective, and be open to having our own minds changed.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure. Especially these days.
Yeah. But I think it's something we should all strive for.
I agree. And these meaningful conversations, they don't have to be, some big formal thing.
Yeah.
They can happen anywhere.
Right, like at dinner with your family.
Exactly. Or in your community.
Even online.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe instead of writing that snarky tweet,
Right.
we should pick up the phone and actually talk to someone we disagree with.
That's the spirit. And you never know. You might even learn something new.
Yeah. And wasn't that what Larry King was all about?
He was.
He was always learning, always curious.
Always open to new ideas.
Yeah. He showed us the power of conversations like that.
Conversations that connect us.
Yeah.
That teach us something.
Yeah, and inspire us.
Absolutely. And in our world today, with all the craziness of the media, it's a good reminder that, those kinds of conversations, they really matter.
More than ever.
More than ever.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Larry King Live.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Big thanks to our expert for all the insights.
Big pleasure.
And, of course, thanks to you for listening.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Make sure to subscribe to that 90s pod for more deep dives into the decade that brought us everything from grunge
Oh, yeah.
to the Spice Girls.
Love it.
And until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep those conversations going.